In case you may not have heard, 3.15 is shaping up to easily be one of the most consequential patches in Star Citizen's history thus far. It introduces two major elements that are part of a core feature that I've spoken about before on this channel called a death of a spaceman, where death actually begins to matter and affects the way that we as players behave in Chris Roberts' universe. So in this video, I'm going to show you why this patch is so consequential, and then break down the different elements that make it so. And if you think I've done a good job by the end, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and the bell icon so that you don't miss my next video. Up until the last patch 3.14, dying in a player versus environment or player versus player gameplay mission has carried little to no consequence, other than of course some minor inconvenience and some bruised egos. But not so in 3.15. To illustrate these two major elements that have changed in this new patch, in the background, I've cut together an unscripted mission generated by a real player who's been knocked unconscious and needs my help. My task is to infiltrate the pirate bunker, clearing the way to his location in order to revive and extract him within a time limit, because he can bleed out at virtually any time or be executed by a pirate during a firefight. And this constitutes just part of the first element that I spoke of in the introduction of this video, the possibility of going into a down state instead of dying. So you may be curious then why he should wait to be extracted as opposed to just backspacing as we do now and returning to a hab. In 3.15, this is no longer possible. Without a pretty major consequence, that is. And this is the second major element added in the 3.15 that is part of a death of a spaceman. In the event that you fully die, you drop the entirety of your player's local inventory with you. That means armor, guns, ammo, loot, and everything that's in your backpack. This includes, by the way, rare subscriber gear that you paid for, which is its own thing that I'm not going to talk about in this video. This means then, of course, that your death can mean the loss of tens of thousands of AUEC worth of gear and potentially expensive loot, but also the loss of a mission, which can carry with it the loss of reputation, something you may not want to do if you're planning on trying to get better paying missions by ranking up and continually completing them successfully. And here you can see, I wasn't able to make it in time, and because of the nature of these new missions, I was continually rushed by pirates and eventually overcome. This is Consequence. So let me break down this patch and all the components that make up what you just saw. When you begin your first session of 3.15, you'll need to select a home starting point. This is where your ships and inventory will be initially physicalized, and this is part of Star Citizen's progress towards true persistence, where items are always physically somewhere in the universe at all times, depending on where you've placed them. While this isn't completely done yet in 3.15, it is a major step in that direction. To that end, everything you purchase from here on out in that location will be automatically placed in the location's local inventory, which can only be accessed while the player, you, is within that area. So inside the city or inside the space station where you've purchased the item or have your stuff. This actually extends out to the Armistice Zone in most cases that I've seen, so you can actually still access your inventory if you're outside of, say, the domes of New Babbage or floating outside the station of Port Tressler. Now this is a placeholder because in the future, when you buy something, it will be physically placed in your hands and you'll have to store it somewhere like in your backpack or in your hab. But for now, they're using this sort of inventory system which can be accessed by hitting I well within that location. Your personal local inventory, though, can be accessed at any time by hitting I. There are also local inventories for places like outposts, which are unique to you and can only be accessed by yourself when you're at that location. Think of it like a personal stash, where you can keep backup things like things for mining or a stash for when you break out of prison so that you can have a new undersuit, some armor, and even a weapon to defend yourself as you make your way to a security outpost to clear your crime stat. This of course means that in order to move things from one landing zone to the other, you'll need to actually physically drag them into your personal inventory, which is tied to items like undersuits, armor pieces, and the newly introduced individually equipable backpacks. These come in a variety of different sizes and colors which go with different setups. Their sizes are also restricted though to an equal or smaller armor chest piece. So for example, a medium chest can't equip a large backpack, but it can equip a medium or small backpack, so keep that in mind. Each backpack also, of course, has a different size storage, so this will also come into play if you're looking to equip a lot of weapons inside that backpack. Alternatively, you can also drag items into your ship's local inventory when on board and still within a landing zone or near a station. Be warned though that a ship that explodes carries the same consequences as for you dying, meaning that all items inside that inventory are dropped when the ship explodes into a convenient little box that you can actually retrieve if you're able to get back there in time before it despawns. Luckily though, each landing zone's orbital station carries the same exact inventory, so if you buy something planetside, it will automatically be accessible in that associated orbital station. That's pretty convenient and actually a pretty good thought on CIG's part. Still though, should you choose to use your ship to transport items or to make your own home, you may take comfort in the fact that 315 is also introducing 30k server crash protection. In the event the server 30ks while you're inside your ship in Quantum or landed on a planet somewhere, the server will remember what was in your inventory and put your ship in the previous known landing zone so that it can be accessed by you next time you log on. This is phenomenal news for those of you who do like using your ship as a base of operations, but also for traders who have in the past suffered from great loss when trying to transport stuff during a 30k. One other thing I want to note here about ship inventories in 315 is that you can also find them on smaller ships like the Gold Standard Gladius and Saber, who both now have an exterior accessible local inventory and weapon storage, making them pretty good for a single-person ship. Ships like the Aurora or the 135C, or any of the 100 series in fact, that have an interior that you can stand in, do have personal inventories that you can access, so you can also store things on those ships that way. Unfortunately though, these local inventories for ships are instanced, because this is, like I said, a placeholder, so if you want to trade items to friends that way, it won't work. Which is actually fine because most items can just be placed on the ground in front of your friend for them to take, so it's not really necessary to put them in your inventory, it's just a thing of convenience. In the case of all these inventories, you have a UI that you can use to access them, which allows you to sort them and search for them through filters to find specific items. This has proven to be really convenient as they've iterated in the PTU, and I suspect it'll be even better by the time it goes to live. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. As you'll also have a lot of things in this coming patch, it'll also be important to know how to find where you've put them, so you can also use the new Knickknacks app in your Mobiglass to find out where they're stored. But now let's move on to the second major component, or feature, that makes up the two that I spoke of at the beginning of this video that make this patch so consequential. The lore for Star Citizen's death has been somewhat modified. Now, instead of your body being recovered, they've decided to go with the clone approach, which is not new to science fiction and has been used in games like EVE Online. Like in EVE Online, when you choose your starting location, your clone will initially be at that location's local hospital. If you don't have a local hospital, such as in the case of Area 18 or Lorville, this is temporary until 316, your clone will be located in the orbital station associated with that landing zone. Now, before you choose what your home location will be, keep in mind that clinics, which are in orbital stations, and Lagrange point stations, are only Tier 2 facilities. And so if you end up having a Tier 1 injury, the highest level of injury, you will not be able to heal yourself fully at that location. If you want to change where you regenerate after death, you'll have to manually go to that location's hospital or clinic and choose to move your regeneration copy to that location. You can also do this for two ships in the game at present, the Carrack and the 890 Jump, making them pretty valuable. To review though, the way you end up in your clone is if you choose to die after you've been incapacitated, or if you receive an injury so significant that your body is unrecoverable. This would be, for example, in the event of your ship exploding, or in the event of you being shot in the head. And once more, if you do die in 315, you'll be leaving everything on your local inventory that's associated with your player on your body. That doesn't count stuff like your local inventory in a station or in a city. It's just what's on your body. If you do end up dying, you will have up to an hour and a half to go back to your body to loot it. But during that time, your body will actually be lootable by other players as well, and this also includes, like I said, sub-items, so be sure not to die if you can avoid it. But incapacitation, as you may have guessed from the beginning of the video, is not the only thing possible to experience in 3.15. This new patch also introduces 3 new tiers of injury, going from Tier 3, the least severe, to Tier 1, which can be life-threatening. Beginning with the lowest severity, Tier 3 injuries are those kinds of injuries that can happen to any part of your body but can be masked by drugs in the event of suffering them. They can be healed by Tier 3 medical beds, such as those found on a Cutlass Red. Tier 2 is slightly more severe and will result in things like limping if your leg is injured, weapon sway if your arms are injured, poor breathing and lower maximum health if your chest is injured, and blurred vision or ear ringing if your head has been injured. These can be temporarily masked by the right drugs for a limited time or healed by a Tier 2 bed or above, like those found in the Carrick or 890 jump. Finally, the most extreme type of injury is Tier 1, which results in severe disability, such as the inability to walk if it's in your legs, the inability to hold a weapon or tool if it's in your arms, and very low health to incapacitation if it happens to be on your chest or head. This could mean that you're unable to be revived completely until you're dragged back to a medical Tier 1 bed that can heal you, which is only located in hospitals. Drugs can stabilize these injuries and temporarily mask an arm or leg injury, but it will not be able to revive somebody if they have it in their head or chest. So again, you have to get them back to a hospital in order to fully revive them. You may be curious then if you can just continually drug yourself and never bother with going to a hospital. Unfortunately, this won't work for long, because your body also has a maximum blood drug level. When it reaches 100%, you will be overdosed and incapacitated, at which point you'll need to wait until your blood drug level reaches below 100%, or you'll need to be given Resurgera, which is the Star Citizen equivalent of Narcan, that can reduce the impact of the overdose and get you back on your feet. But in the duration, if you're still close to 100%, you'll still have a lot of severe effects. In this overdose state prior to 100%, you'll lose the ability to properly walk, hold a weapon, or even fly or drive a vehicle. It's actually pretty funny if you get to this state, but it's deadly serious if you end up in this state if you're in a bunker and you're pinned down, or if you're in a firefight with a real player and trying to get out of there alive. Now, in order to administer in-field temporary treatment or to revive a player in a down state, you're going to need either a set of med pens, a medical gun, or a medical attachment for your multi-tool. The benefits of the medical pens are in that they are near instant in their application, so in a pinch they'll save you from bleeding out or from losing mobility at a crucial moment that can save your life. They can also be administered to allies by holding right-click while you're near them. In 3.15 they come in 5 different flavors. The first one is the familiar red med pen, which is now called Hemazol. It's used to stabilize yourself or others by stopping bleeding and restoring health. It can also bring a person out of incapacitation, but it will not heal or mask injuries. For that, you're going to need one of the following 3 options. First is the purple pen, which is the adrenopen that contains demoxitrin. This is responsible for helping with arm injuries that can cause weapon sway and will restore the ability for you to use weapons and tools temporarily. The next one is the opio pen, which is green and contains roxafen. This helps mitigate leg injuries that can cause slower movement, limping, or even immobilization, so this is pretty useful. The third option you have is the orange corticopen, which contains Sterigen. This helps with mitigating injuries to your chest, which can reduce health and stamina, and injuries to your head, which can reduce vision and hearing. Finally, you've got the gray detoxifen pen, which contains Resurgera. This works to reduce blood drug level, which, as I told you earlier, is important because you can overdose and become incapacitated. You can use Resurgera to balance too many drugs and bring somebody out of incapacitation by reducing their blood drug level. After the medical pens, you have access to something called a multi-tool medical attachment, which is able to administer just Hemazol, the red one. It has approximately 300 milliliters of Hemazol to the medgun's 200, but is otherwise inferior in virtually every way to the medgun. Actually, I can't imagine why you would ever use one, but it's an option. The medgun is the best alternative. It's capable of administering pretty much automatically any of these drugs, or manually administering these drugs in the manual mode. It's highly versatile, but is slower than the med pens, as I stated earlier, so it's best used undercover or to pre-med before an engagement. Pre-medding in any case will reduce your chance of going down after receiving a serious injury in the affected area, and is something I personally recommend if you're going to be doing bunker missions or going versus players on the ground in an FPS combat mission. To use either the med gun or the multi-tool on yourself, hit B while holding it and you'll be able to administer it yourself. If you want to change to the manual mode or switch between the different types of drugs on your med gun, you'll have to hold F and select the toggle button on the top of the device and switch to the manual mode where you can access a bunch of sliders to select which you want to administer. And if it's not been clear here, because both the medical attachment for the multi-tool and the med gun administer Hemazole, they're both capable of reviving somebody from incapacitation. So that's pretty much how all of the new medical equipment works, but what happens if you actually go down? In the event that you're incapacitated, first of all, I'm sorry, but you have an option to be rescued. You can send out a medical rescue beacon for 15,000 AUEC. This, unfortunately though, does leave you vulnerable to being looted, but it's somewhat mitigated by the fact that you can rate the person's performance and that criminals are unable to accept medical beacons. So there's that. So to this end, I would highly recommend that you have some friends that you know who play Star Citizen, or that you bring some friends along with you if you put yourself in dangerous situations often so that you can be revived in the event that you've been incapacitated. Luckily though, it does look like they're able to mark gear as stolen, as when I took a security officer's gear and I was scanned by another security officer in space, I was given a crime stat for possession of stolen goods. So hopefully we'll be able to mark our stuff as stolen if a player ends up looting it off our body and we're a good guy at the time of that looting. On the flip side, if you're somebody who accepts a medical beacon to go rescue somebody, something that I did at the beginning of this video, you'll need to bring the medical equipment that I talked about. You'll also perhaps need to drag that person using the drag option by selecting them to pull them to a medical bed in the event they've got a severe injury like a tier 1 to the head or body. It is possible to also place them on a gurney, however, those things get stuck super easily and they're virtually unusable. Hopefully, we'll be able to get something a bit more mobile like a hover gurney or a foldable one, or maybe even the option to put somebody over our shoulder like a fireman's carry. But that's not in as of yet, so we'll have to wait and see if CIG puts something like that in soon. In the event that you do have to use a hospital, there are hospital elevators located in major landing zones such as in New Babbage and Orison. Area 18 and Lorville, like I said earlier, will have their hospitals coming online sometime later this year or early next year. Once you arrive in a bed, you can use the interaction menu on the screen near the bed to heal your injuries. This is also true for Tier 3 beds and Tier 2 beds such as those found in the Drake Cutlass Red, the 890 Jump, and the Carrack. As you can probably tell then by the length of this video, there is a lot going on with 315, and that's why it's so incredibly consequential. All of these new medical systems really impact the way that we play the game and impact what we choose to do, what we choose to take with us. And this is going to be even more impactful going forward as they add more systems on top of this, making every death mean more. And that's one of the other reasons why I haven't posted a video for the past 2 weeks. I've spent these past 2 weeks in PTU trying to figure out how all these systems work, trying to figure out how the balance is. And even now, I still feel like I haven't really fully explained everything or even spoken to the balance of these systems, because I think that they do need a lot of rebalancing. There are some problems with it, and it certainly isn't where it should be for it to be truly impactful on its first release, but hopefully they get something done before it goes to live. But considering the Aerospace Expo coming up in 2 weeks, I'm kind of doubtful they will, so we may have to wait for 315.1 in order to see a better rebalance, or maybe as late as 316. But I'm going to leave that for another video because this is already nearly 20 minutes long and most of you have probably already switched off by now. So let me know about your thoughts down below on this new medical system and the inventory system and how it's going to impact your gameplay. Do you hate it? Do you love it? I want to know. But if you like this video and you want to see more, you know what to do. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys in the next one.